right?
absorb anything else.
You have how many children?
Two.
Two. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, 6 and 2.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So,
Yeah, we can.
so we're at the very beginning.
We're at the beginning.
God bless you. Let us pray.
Exactly. Hey guys, we're back, Church Car Karaoke, and we have a special guest, Senator Mike Reichenbach and Charisse Reichenbach. So hang tight, sit back, enjoy the conversation. This is gonna be a good one. You ready?
I'm ready to go.
You ready?
Ready to roll.
You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So, tell us a little bit about, you guys' upbringing. I'll let Senator Mike start first, and then Ms. Charisse, you can go right after that, and then we'll kind of see where things go from there.
Well, thank you. First, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
It's funny that you called me Senator Mike because she's really the senator. I'm more the husband of the senator.
There you go.
Anybody who knows us for almost 30
You're her representation.
almost 30 years of life, like we do life together. And
Yeah.
she's in the Senate every day with me, but they call us like one half of the senator of Florida.
There you go.
We each got half, and I'm
Share the
So
role.
together we make a whole.
That's right.
Okay.
It's actually funny because there's 46 senators in the state,
Right.
and they call me the 47th, but she's the 46th, and I'm okay with that. God blessed me with her almost
There you
30
go.
years ago.
30 years ago.
Yeah, but you
30.
asked about upbringing.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we love being able to share what God has done and how good He is. Because,
Right.
real briefly, for me, my story started with a 14-year-old girl back in 1971 who gets
Wow.
pregnant by her 15-year-old boyfriend. And
Wow.
the boyfriend finds out, he takes off. Her name is Beverly.
Mhm.
She comes back, tells her mom I'm pregnant, and her mom says, well, you got 3 choices. And frankly, you've embarrassed me. You're 14,
Wow.
unwed with a baby. And
Wow.
I tell that story for a particular reason, because she ends up birthing me,
Mhm.
puts me into foster care, but eventually I get adopted by a family.
Wow.
And with my last name Reichenbach, anybody who knows phonetics
There
knows
you go.
it isn't pronounced Reichenbach.
Exactly.
It's Reichenbach. It's as German as you can find. And I challenge anybody to find another black German, because there's just not black Germans running around
Exactly.
here.
It's not happening.
But Ed and Shirley Reichenbach, they adopt me, and when they were in high school was the first time they had ever seen a black person, because
Wow.
it was an all German small farm town.
Wow.
They just felt compelled on their heart to adopt me, but they didn't know what it was like to raise a black child. How do you do nappy hair?
Right,
They had,
right,
and
right,
they would tell me
right.
as I got older, they weren't sure if black skin needs sunscreen.
There you go.
Because black skin burn. It's different stories that you learn.
You don't
right?
know what you don't
You
know.
don't know what you don't know. But I met Beverly when I was 18, just through a wonderful kind of confluence of circumstances. God
Right.
allowed us to meet. So I know her story. But I tell that story because God is so faithful
Yes.
to put you where you need to be. And Ed and Shirley, my mom and dad, taught me that my identity was going to be developed by my faith in God and my discipline and my work ethic,
Right.
Not by the color of my skin and how it's different from the rest of my family. And
Right.
I thank God for Florence, because Florence adopted us.
Wow.
It almost what, 20 years ago now, Charisse, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Into this family here, and we love Florence, we love the community, but that's kind of how my start was. Charisse, I'll let my other senator talk about her.
I know his
Charisse.
story so much more. Like his story is so much more impactful and like exciting. I mean, people are like, "Wow, that's crazy!" And then oh yeah. But anyways, my story is just I grew up in Detroit. My mom was a school teacher in Detroit. God bless her. That's hard. I tell you, teachers out there,
Yes.
God bless you. You are like awesome. My dad worked for the Michigan Employment Security Commission, and they we were always like the odd person in the community. We went into places that there weren't a lot of people who looked like us, and yet and still, we had such favor with people. I grew up in a Christian home with a Christian family and Christian school and all of that. Went to college. Really realized then it's like at college, like you grow up loving the Lord, and then you get to a place where He becomes your Lord. And so that was like a defining moment for me. Very, very much so. Very much so. And so it became more of a lifestyle than just something that you did on Sundays. And but the crazy thing is that later on, I was like 26 you're 25, I'm 26. And there was a visiting minister who's a prophet from South Africa, and he had come over to Detroit. It wasn't at a church that I attended, but people from our church were talking about him. People from Mike's church in Ohio were talking about him. Wow. So I happened to be going, and before you know it, it's like one of those things where it's happening every single night for now months. So they started a regional choir. I joined it. The woman next to me was from Mike's church. She's like, I got a guy I want you to meet. Wow. So Mike comes in, and the funny thing is, y'all will laugh, he comes in and he's got this white woman on his arm. I was like, oh, we brought a date.
Well, I brought my sister.
Okay?
You were thinking,
what is this woman?
She's trying to put us together.
Exactly, why?
Making me a homewrecker.
Crazy. So I'm like, okay.
I was like, cool mode D. Yeah, that was cool.
Exactly. Long story short, that was in January. We were engaged in March and married in August of the same year.
But first we got to tell them the first date. So, the story.
Let's talk about that.
I meet her. I have a girl with me. She hides in the bathroom. She finally comes out. I got swagger. I'm thinking something.
There you go.
She's like, well, okay. She's okay with it, but she gives me her number.
Right.
I call her a few days later, and for the first date, it wasn't intended, but I needed a date for a wedding.
There you go.
So I was like, I need a date for the wedding. You want to come? And she decides to go. This is about the providence of God. Right?
There you go.
I invite her down to Ohio. I invite her on a Saturday. I call her that following Sunday, telling her the wedding will be that coming up Saturday night. Wow. And she doesn't call me back Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I call her finally, and I'm like, did I offend you? I'm like, what is wrong? You're not going to call me back?
Exactly.
And she's like, I was going to call you. I'm like, you don't even know when the wedding starts.
Exactly.
But anyway.
Wow, I was working an entire day and then going to church every single night.
Yeah. But anyway.
And then driving back home in just an hour.
So you were seeking the Lord, and He was trying to get a date.
You better believe it. But here's the providence of God. We go to this wedding. We come back. She spends the night at my sister's house. But we stayed up much of the night just talking to get to know each other. Right. It was our actual first date.
Right.
And it was, we realized that we did not have real compatibility. We were in different places, and and frankly, we had both had a past at that point. We're 25, 26.
Exactly.
We made decisions that we thought really nullified what God was going to do in our life. Right. The next morning we get up and we're like, this is done. This will be the last time we see each other.
And we said this individually
to ourselves.
So how long was the drive to the wedding?
It was not even far. It was like 20 minutes. She came down from Detroit. But that night we spoke much of the night and realized that we felt that next morning individually that it was not a match. God, things have happened. It's not a match. And as I was standing there in church, standing beside her, thinking this will be the last time we see each other. Wow. In my life of 53 years, I can't recall more than maybe twice that I've heard the audible voice of God, or I felt it. Wow. But I felt it in my heart as clear as it was an audible voice. Wow. God saying, you can't live without this woman. And we walked outside after the church, and I said, I don't know what I'm saying, but I can't see the rest of my life without you. Wow. And I couldn't even believe the words that were coming out of my mouth, but I know they were God.
I knew they were God too.
And what did you feel, Charisse?
Well, because the same thing is, I was going to dismiss him. I'm like, oh, whatever. And so we're in praise and worship. And I'm lost in praise and worship. It was so beautiful. And I hear the Lord say, he's the one. And I said, no, Lord, he's not. And
You're going to argue with God. How does that work?
Hey, I have learned. The Lord likes for me to contend with him a little bit, you know?
He has to prove it to you.
Yeah, and I go, no, he's not. And he says, he's the one. And I said, yes, Lord. Because I had always told the Lord, I'm not going to be one of those people going back and forth. Is he not?
Right.
I want, like when Mary when Mary heard Martha, her voice, and John, Jesus inside, or John the Baptist inside of her had jumped at the sound of Mary's voice. I was like, that they knew that you knew that you knew. And so I was like, all right, Lord, he's the one. He's the one. And then a couple months later, after that, we're engaged.
Engaged in March and then married in August. But one thing I often tell young people is, like, attraction is great, but attraction and infatuation isn't necessarily God's calling.
Right.
To try to be obedient and to seek God. And it isn't always the way play out the way we want it to be, but God's plan is better than our own.
Right.
And quite honestly, it really helps, like in the hard times, because we have had our hard times in our marriage.
Absolutely.
And in those hard times, love doesn't work at that point.
Exactly.
You know?
It's not enough.
You've
It's not enough.
got to have a foundation that's something stronger than that.
Yep.
And
Beyond
even
yourself.
when you don't see it.
Bigger than yourself.
Yep.
And so that's where you go back and you say, Lord, what you brought together, what
No
you
man
even brought
pulls up.
together.
It's a long answer to a short question. That's how it all started. That's how it started.
Good.
That's how it all started.
So how did your individual families feel about the? Because I'm thinking, okay, you started dating in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Okay, marriage, husband and wife. So how
All
did?
within 8 months.
Yep.
How did your individual families like?
Well, the funny thing is, his sister was at that wedding that we went to, and they were already picking out our wedding colors.
Wow.
Thank God I did not know that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, y'all were like, yeah.
Right, that's exactly right.
I know. So she's like, I know this is the one.
We'll attend another wedding, but just not together.
Yeah, so my family was,
Yes.
my family really fell in love with her. Probably like her more than they like me. Even
There
at
you
this
go.
point. They really do. They do.
That
Yeah.
happens.
I was like, this is the best choice
Yes.
you've ever made.
Yeah.
Yes. But my family was like, whoa, this is way too soon.
Yeah.
We don't know, like, all of this stuff. And I was like,
God,
I know that I know that I know. And they're like, well, what's the hurry? Don't take your time.
Exactly.
And if either one of our kids were to come back and 60 days later they're engaged, I'd probably give them the advice.
Exactly.
Please
Wait,
slow down. Wait.
It's this.
It's
It's
Yeah.
a different time.
It is.
It's different time, but when you know,
You know,
and
that's
you've been
right.
told,
So let me ask you this in the mic.
Sure.
So let me ask you this in the mic. Sure. So do you feel that there is a sense of more incentivized purpose in your life? So the reason why I asked that is because your story is not like the norm. There was a decision that was being made while you were still being developed in the womb. So that your 14-year-old mom decides to have you. Your 14-year-old mom decides to put you in foster home. A family comes. So as you've grown up in life, was there like an inclination, like, okay, I'm purposed for something? Because there was a lot of odds that I had to overcome.
Boy, that's a very insightful and deep question, and it gets to much of how I've led my life. Looking back now, I didn't know what it was called, but the clinical terminology is survivor's guilt to a degree, and guilt isn't always a bad thing. My survivor's guilt was that I am here, and there's a reason why, and let's make the most of it. She had every reason to abort me. At 14, it was the ridicule and the scorn, the names of you're a whore, you're this, you're that. And she had every reason to have the cleaner on the surface answer to abort me, but she gave me life and an opportunity against so many odds. So I was always an overachiever. I was valedictorian in my high school class, and I wasn't the smartest kid in the room, but I worked harder because I wanted to make my family proud, to make others proud. College, because I really wanted to outwork those around me. Most of the decisions I've made have, in the back of my mind, I seek people's approval an affirmation because I want to make people proud. But I balance that with God. You gave me life. You gave me a purpose. How do I do the most with it?
Right.
There's a book I read. It's called Halftime, and it has to do with focusing from success as a focus to significance.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with success, financial, professional success. But there's a time I believe God places it on our hearts. He put it in my heart to also focus on significance. How can you be significant in others' lives? How can you do what you do for God's glory and for man's good, for humankind's good? And that's a balancing act that I still work to maintain. But I do think that God allowed me to be here. He put strength in Beverly's heart, even at 14, to give me life. When there was other options that were maybe easier at the time, and I want to make the most of it. It's a big question, though. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So you guys meet in church. So my next question is that, how has faith built your relationship with each other?
Charisse, I'll let you answer that first.
Well, I think I would say that we really are. There is nothing good about us as humans and as imperfect people. There is nothing good about us without the Lord, and He is the only sustaining thing that has been a factor, and not just in trifling saying, "Oh, Jesus is my Lord," but it is a daily, literally dying to self. I gotta tell you, some of the worst times when we are having disagreements and such, you cannot go before the Lord in prayer and reading the Word and be okay. Like it messes with you. So your relationship with Him is tied up in your relationship with your spouse. And so it's a constant of dying to what you want and how you want to take up your we start that, and then you're like, okay, nope, I can't, because I'm actually fighting against myself. I'm fighting against the one who is me. And so nobody wants to do that, and it's really hell. I mean, it is. Those times are the worst of times.
Right. And I would say, as her husband, the desire to seek humility for me only really comes when I seek God first, because I'll begin to seek to believe my own press that she doesn't appreciate me, she doesn't consider me. I could do better. Those days when marriage gets hard, and I would venture to say for most of us, at least for us, I can say there are going to be days when there's good reasons to not want to be married. Like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But the humility to say, God, like, I want you more than I want flesh. That's hard for me to say that if I don't seek Him in a consistent basis in prayer and in His Word. But He's so gracious. The one thing I try to encourage young people is have grace for yourself while you seek God. Because it is, as a parent and as a husband, I mess up, and I will continue to. And I think most of us, I won't speak for anyone else, but most of us will mess up. Trying to keep a perfect standard is impossible. So while we do work to do right, have grace for yourself as a parent and as a spouse, to say, in the humility to say to your spouse, I'm sorry, and I messed up, will you forgive me? And that's a vulnerable position to be in, but some of our greatest days have been when we've had the strength to go to each other and say, I'm really sorry, Charisse, will you forgive me?
Boy, I'll tell you, the atmosphere changes right at that moment. And I think that's, I always say that this is like, God loves a weak reach. He loves it when His people are like, I don't have this, I don't know what to do, so I'm reaching out to you to help me in this relationship, to help me in this place.
The scripture said, come to Him.
Yes. It is.
The other thing, kind of the key in our marriage has been realizing we aren't meant to do this alone. Like, I've heard some people say, well, I think to them counseling is weak. shows
Right.
weakness or therapy is weakness.
Right.
I disagree. I think like,
Absolutely.
just like we're in the car business and people come in and they have maintenance done on their cars.
There you go.
I think we need maintenance on our marriages and maintenance on me as a man and on she as a woman. There's nothing wrong with going to somebody who is trained, who has
Exactly.
skill set different than what we have to say, I can help you get stronger. Even if it's good, it can be better.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've been in counseling before. We've professional counseling. We surround ourselves with good people who will speak to us, not always what we want to hear, but what we need to hear. And then also too, whenever we try to once a year do one of the a seminar or something that mostly churches will put on, marriage retreat type of thing. Because again, nobody has it all, and we're always changing. We're always changing, and so it's really good.
I have a question for Senator Point 5. So of course you wear many hats. You're a wife. You're a mother. You're half a senator.
The better half.
The better half. So how do you maintain each role? With still, of course, giving your kids what they need, giving you what you need, giving your husband what he needs. What advice would you have? Of course, this is Women's History Month. What advice would you give to women who are having a hard time, like struggling to kind of balance everything out, but still stay true to themselves?
Well, I'd say truly, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And I know we say that, like that whole thing about the being on the airplane, put the oxygen mask upon yourself before you put it on others, okay? And I know this is probably the hardest part, but having even small times of having the time with the Lord, because to me that's the first and foremost. Everything that you give out comes out of that, because there are times, you get impatient with your kids. You get impatient with them. And our mouth can say things that can either lift up or tear down, and we don't even realize it. And so it is actually orienting our hearts first. But in terms of having so many other things, I think honestly, having a no button and saying, no, I can't, because I'm going to sacrifice the best things for good things. And that took a long time for me to come to peace with, is that I don't have to. And as Mike said, sometimes you get to this place, you really do want to please people. You don't want to say no to people, but you've got to, or else you won't be any good for anybody.
That's true.
And
I would even say to that point, she learned, and I watched her grow. Such a great question, but I watched her grow as a woman of God, even in the church. There's times when the church can pull more than she could give, like be at church 3 days a week. And
prayer, or
and you got prayer,
and you're
got
with the
sporting
kids
events.
ministry,
and
then you got your kids,
being able to say, you know what, I can't be there 3 days a week. I can't, and being okay with that, not feeling condemnation. I've seen her grow in that.
That's good.
Because I also, the foremost role is to love Him.
That's good.
Because I also believe that, like God also gives us our role, and our first and foremost role is to love Him, but then to care for the people who are right in our immediate circle that He's given to us. And then from there, it's an outreach. And if we're neglecting those first two, we're no good to anybody else. And so I think it's, and the other thing too is, I hate this, and really we've said it too. When you talk to somebody, most times people say, "Oh, so busy, so busy, so busy." We were never meant to be so busy.
That is true. That's true.
Because when you are so busy, you don't have time to meditate. You don't have time to reflect. You don't have time to do inner searching. You don't have time to actually look at somebody and see them. And so that is hard to do when you are a mom, business, in all these places. You got to step away. And I love how Jesus did it. He ministered to so many people, but there were some people He didn't minister to. And then there are some times that He actually stepped away. We need to take take a book out of his chapter.
Yeah.
Rest.
It's, I think, you know, as a people, we are immune to going. And I like to think, like, at the end of this all, guys, there's no badge for going.
Right? There's no, you don't get an award for being the busiest.
Right.
You get a heart attack.
Yeah, so it's going to pass. So I agree. Rest. So if there's nothing else we've learned today, rest.
You know, one of the things too, and I think, you know, other people, they look at us and they're like, you guys are everywhere and everywhere. So I don't believe you when you say that you rest. But here's the other thing too, is I feel like when God has called you to some things, he also, there's grace and power and strength for creating a lot in smaller amounts too. Doing a lot more with your time.
Yeah.
But you also have to give some time too. You've got to orchestrate your time. But like when people say, you know, gosh, you know, you guys are going, no, we do have our downtime. When we do, we really do rest. But I do believe that there's also a grace for what God has given each and every one of us in our sphere of influence. That he can multiply, because he is the God of multiplication.
He is. He can do a lot more.
He can.
Time and time again. All right, so let's move over. There's another hard-hitting question. Which one has been easier, or which one has been hardest? I'll let you decide how you want to answer. Being a spouse or being a parent?
You want to go for first grade?
Smart man,
All
smart.
right.
What time of day is it?
What day of the week is it?
Woo, yes.
I know that is
It'll be
a
in two parts. Parent to small children or parent to now adult children?
yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say when we were younger, I think marriage was harder because your kids, you got a lot more control over kids.
Yeah, that's true.
So marriage, I'd say, was harder. Now, marriage is so much better, you know.
Yeah.
And those teenage to adult years, I'm like, why didn't somebody ever tell me once they leave the house, you are never done?
No.
You are never done until the day you are in the grave.
Yeah.
Like you are never
It's a forever
done.
job.
It's a forever job. And so there is it's I think harder with adult kids because you're letting them try to be their own and to make mistakes and to not hover and but to be, you're gingerly measuring what you say and your wisdom according to how much that they also too want to receive it, because you want them to receive it. And so I think now it's harder being
the parent.
being a
I
parent.
would actually go a different direction. I think as the man of the house, where I carried the mantle to protect and to secure.
Right.
When they were young, the kids were young, the nights of endless or of not sleeping, worrying about them, worrying about my family, those were hard days. Like I knew Charisse could take care of herself.
Right.
She's the strongest woman I've ever known. And she's a woman of prayer. But when our kids were young, trying to battle the social media and the influences of school and those in the world that would do them harm. That was a heavy mantle that I wore. Not that she didn't wear it with me, but we kind of had different roles. And one of the roles that I had was protect my family. And there's an entire world out there that would work to erode their identity.
Exactly.
That would work to erode who God should be in their life.
Exactly.
That would give them false narratives of what it's like to be an adulting person, a young person, an adolescent. Those were some scary days. And maybe the biggest grace God ever gave me was the point when I realized that He loves them even more than I do, which I could never fathom. But that He created them.
That's an excellent point.
He created who they are. He loves them. He knows them, and that if I give it unto Him, He would bless that. Doesn't make it all perfect. Things happen,
of course,
but that He was going to bless the works of my hand and what we tried to do. Because outside of God, the worry of like, God, are my kids okay? That can be paralyzing.
Right.
Especially when they're not in your sight and trusting someone else
Right.
to, treat them the way you treat them. And
Yeah.
But the world itself can be very cruel.
It really can.
Very
And
cruel.
you don't get out of life unscathed.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter your race, your gender,
No.
your socioeconomics, how much
Exactly.
money you make, how little money you make.
Exactly.
None of us get out of it unscathed.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I try to encourage young people with, is that salvation and relationship with God doesn't necessarily change the events of life.
Right?
It just teaches you how to handle it better.
Absolutely right.
So we're coming across something that should be very near and dear to you guys' heart.
Ah,
Yep.
yes.
Oh my goodness.
What does this place mean to you guys?
Boy, I would say for me, this meant God's grace and His mercy. And I say the word mercy in particular. Many people don't realize 2008 was our
Yes.
first year here.
Wow.
And
What a great time.
for those who know anything, the younger people may not remember it. But the Great Recession, oh my goodness.
My goodness.
A week after we bought this place, we opened up
Wow.
the paper and we saw the Lehman Brothers
Wow.
file bankruptcy. And being a finance guy, I'm like,
Wow.
Charisse, this is really bad.
This is really.
This is bad.
This was not a good idea.
And those words were said. This was not a good idea.
We got no savings, nothing, like everything
Right.
went into this.
Everything
Right.
was invested
Right.
here.
Right.
And I remember coming home and telling her, we might lose it all. And I will work. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I was like, I'll work
And
3 jobs.
How old were the kids at the time?
The kids were 5 and 3.
Oh, and
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, 5 and 3. And
Buddy.
those are days when you're horrified of my family
Yeah.
Right.
not being able to make ends meet.
Right.
And God was so good because he gave me a wife that would support me, because she was a stay-at-home mom. So I would come home, but then when I'd be working 12-hour days, she'd put the kids in the onesies and bring them up, and we'd have dinner together at the dealership. And then she'd put them back in car seats when they'd fall asleep and take them back to the house. And we were able to still be a family when I was working 60 and 70 hours a week. Yeah, so those were tough days, though.
yeah.
What emotions do you have, Charisse, when you see it?
Oh gosh! As soon as you said. Gosh, I tell you, as soon as you said that I still have a little PTSD from that time.
I bet.
But I will say it fortified us in ways that we never even knew that we had. But I think since then, we've come more out of that it's become more even about what it's been to the people who work there, as well as also what it's been to the community, because like somebody had told us that there had been people, who had been lynched over there years ago. And I just think sometimes this is the redeeming part of God, that He redeems things. He doesn't just say, I wipe it away, but He will actually redeem it. And I think, God redeems the land. And so I also believe that He redeems it also for people. And so, we pray over the employees, and God would bless them with exactly what they need.
Yeah.
Not what they always want, because we don't always want.
What we need.
Yes.
Amen.
So, and believe it or not, this is so crazy, but every time we drive by and we see a sticker that has Mike Rickenbaugh on the back, we actually bless every car.
Wow.
And we ask them and we say, Lord, thank you for buying a car from us. Lord, bless them with exactly what they need.
You never told that story before. That's something
We've never said that before.
Wow.
But it is so I look at it as more than just like it was a financial thing for us when we were losing, when we were gaining, but also what it's done for our employees, what it's done for the land, as well as then how we're blessing people who have bought.
Absolutely. And side note, you and my wife was the recipient of one of your blessings. So.
Oh, thank you for that. All right. And that mattered. Yeah.
It was our first major purchase.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, that is huge.
That is huge.
That was our first major purchase together.
That is huge.
And now we're so old, we've been doing it. We get people whose kids have come in.
Exactly.
And now even the next one, their grandkids. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay.
That's a blessed generation.
It is.
Yep,
Oh, wow.
it worked well when we just had one child.
Yeah.
And then once the family started growing, it's like,
That's
yeah,
right.
we need a little something bigger.
But that's one thing that made Florence such a special place. That's why it'll be for our forever home.
Right.
At the time we bought this store in 2008, we were the youngest minority dealer in the state, and one of only 8 minority dealers in the entire state.
Wow.
But Florence gave us the opportunity. Like,
Right.
folks were like, Florence isn't going to accept you. But we wouldn't accept that as an answer.
Exactly.
Like, you know what?
Exactly.
Like, God placed us here.
May not accepted you.
That's right.
That's
But
That's your story.
that's right. But Florence, as a community, adopted us. That's why I started with my adoption story, because Florence adopted us, and we love the
Wow.
folks here who allowed us to become a. I love the stories of the 3rd and 4th generation Florentines.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
after being here now, even 1st generation, we are no less Florentines than those 4th and 5th
Exactly.
generation.
Exactly.
This community accepts people.
Exactly.
I love this place.
Exactly. And matter of fact, I don't think we touched on that. So you guys were in the Detroit area, in Ohio. How did you make your way to Florence, South Carolina?
Goodness gracious, that's a great question.
How did you find it on the
Yeah,
map?
we got a phone. We had decided to go from corporate to retail because when you're corporate, we were blessed, but every 2 to 3 years you get a phone call to relocate to another city. And we had been in Detroit, we'd been in Ohio, we'd been in Europe. We were all over the United States, the U.S. and the globe with the Ford Motor Company, but we were ready to have roots. So kids were young and we didn't want to keep moving. So we told Ford, anywhere in the nation we'll consider buying a dealership. Where should we go? Or what stores are available? Where were we when we got the call, Charisse?
Where we got the call about
Here,
Yeah.
we were in New York. We had just we were entering, or like an interim dealer for a dealership. We had done so well in profitability that we won a trip to New York. So we're in New York enjoying this trip.
Getting ready to buy a dealership in Dallas.
Yes, in Dallas, Texas, because that's where we were at the time.
And they said, come down and look at the store in Florence.
Yeah.
Of course.
Italy?
What?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, right?
Italy?
Florence, Italy?
Oh, nice.
We've been in Europe. I know.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we came here and we toured the town, and there were some folks who were like, well, Florence isn't Charleston, and Florence isn't Greenville, and Florence is not Columbia.
It
But
is not.
instead of focusing on what Florence isn't, let's talk about what Florence is.
Right.
It's a kind of town where you can have roots, where you can get to know people, where you can be involved in the community
Yes.
different than you can in a
Yes.
Greenville or a Charleston. So we're designed to be in we're designed to be in this town, and it's not a Greenville or a Columbia, but I don't think we should try to be.
No.
I think that's what makes it unique.
That's right.
You still, and it's growing every day.
It is.
Yeah. There's been a lot of changes. A lot of changes. Needful changes. I feel like that.
Change is, change should be continuous.
Yes.
And
We weren't made
yes.
to stay the same. We were supposed
No.
to evolve. So
No.
the things we put our hands to supposed to evolve.
Amen.
So I know we're just out of the election cycle, and congratulations for the re-election back into the Senate.
Thank you.
My question for you both: how did the conversation come and say, you know what, Charisse, I think I'm gonna run for senator?
That's a great question. We get that question a fair amount, and really it started about probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
We were in Columbia learning about a bill that affected the auto industry.
Wow.
And we had no interest in getting into politics, but we
Right.
did have an importance to learn about this bill.
Right.
And we started to talk to some of the legislators at the time.
Okay.
Good people,
Right.
but 1 out of every 3 legislators is an attorney. There's very few business people. And as
Exactly.
we would talk to some of the legislators in both the House and the Senate about this bill and what it would do to our industry,
Right.
I would say words like, well, here's what it does to your balance sheet, or here's what it does to your income statement, and they wouldn't know what that meant
Right.
because they didn't understand business. And
Yeah.
I came home and told Charisse, this is scary. These people are making laws for their state, and they
Yeah.
don't understand
the economics
the
behind it.
business aspect of it, the economics, and 80% of the jobs in this state are small businesses. So if they don't know what's impacting small businesses, they are not going to make a good assessment and an engaged, informed decision. So we've got to put that in the back of our head. And people ask that. I mean, we love our community, and because of the marketing and the dealership, you know, our name ID was pretty high. But people wanted us to run for Congress. They wanted us to run for mayor when Mayor Wakila stepped down. They wanted us to be in politics. But we fortunately,
For such a time as this, as you say.
yeah.
For such a time as this.
But fortunately, you know, that's right. Hey, Esther, yeah. But we really seek God over man's approval, even over ours. So we would take some time away and we'd pray and fast, like, God, are you calling us? And it was always a no until the Senate seat opened up, and we realized we could serve our state and be good for Florence County and for the PD, and not have to go to Washington. That we were called to this. So our son who's our youngest, he had graduated. We were eating dinner, celebrating being empty nesters. We're having dinner, we're having a nice steak, and we're like, Charisse, what now?
Exactly.
And that was in August.
We are so open.
And then our, you know,
Be careful what you tell
I know, we're open.
You are so open.
Like, I'm glad you said that.
Because
It's interesting that you said that.
That's the Success to Significance book.
That's
You
right.
You just finished it. We read it. And so you're like, okay, Lord,
Ready
hands
for whatever.
open.
That was August. In October,
Wow.
Senator Leatherman passed away. So 60 days later, the position opened up.
That's correct.
And
And
we're
she's
like,
like, remember what you
Yes.
said?
that's right.
Yes.
So that's how we ended up getting into it.
Wow.
And so we know that politics can be very, very messy. It has its positive points, and then it does has its drawbacks of like, yeah, this is not what I signed up for.
Right.
And especially people of faith, sometimes that's a hard thing to kind of balance between your civic duty and your Christian duty. So my question for you both is that how can I word this? How did your faith help you be the leaders that you are now in this community, from the civic aspect and trying to line all those things up with your core Christian values?
Sure. Why don't you go first, Charisse?
You know, you come into this first of all with your ideas, and you realize that it's not exactly what you thought, and it's a lot harder than what you ever anticipated. Nobody, just like marriage, you don't know what you're getting into until you really get in it.
Exactly.
And knowing that it's weighty, it becomes even more weighty, because you realize that everything you say yay or nay on is impacting people's lives. And it's not exactly right and wrong. There's a lot of gray in between. I think a lot of it is really when you don't know, there's only one who does know. And so a lot of our prayers were always, Lord, like Solomon, give me wisdom and understanding and a heart.
Right.
And a heart.
Right.
Because you need wisdom in order to know what to do, understanding to know what to do, but you also have a heart that it wears on you, because you really do want it to wear on you.
Absolutely. Let me give you one great example of what she's talking about. Like issues like, should we lower the state income tax? Those are pretty easy with not a lot of emotion, right?
Right.
Put more money back in people's pockets.
Right.
But the social issues, one big one is the transgender.
Right.
We took up a transgender bill. Now our faith leads us to conclude that there are two genders.
Right. Right.
So the not allowing young people, minors, to have trans or gender altering surgeries and medical procedures is a fundamental faith decision.
Right.
But when you hear in testimony from young people who say, I believe I was born in the wrong gender and I want to take my own life if I can't change my gender, that's one of those where you walk away and you're like, Lord, I want to do what's right.
Right.
And on our faith would say we should absolutely not allow puberty blockers and gender transition surgeries on young people. Right. But then when you hear testimony from a mom whose 14-year-old has killed herself because she felt she was in the wrong body, and she is in tears saying, if only she could have modified, she wouldn't have been dead right now. You leave that saying, Lord, I just want to do what's right. Give us the strength and the wisdom to do what's right, and how to balance the faith with what is right. And that's hard.
So there is a thing is leaning towards constitutionally. What is our Constitution?
Right.
Say, and then there is also our faith, because we believe, as the Bible talks about, putting leaders who are in places of positioning like that they should be good leaders, good reproach. Like there's a list of things, and that you're seeking the Lord. You cannot do life without seeking Him, and so there is that aspect of it as well too. And so then you're having to look at it all, but it is
It's really a filter.
right.
Like,
First level of the filter is, does the Bible address it?
right.
Biblically, in our faith. The second filter is, if the Bible doesn't address it, does the Constitution address it? And if the Constitution doesn't, and it's just go left or go right, but it's not really covered by the Bible or the Constitution, then it's, what do our constituents want?
Exactly.
In all honesty, the Bible does address every single issue in life. Now, it might not get down to here's the fine print,
Subtopics.
but it does address everything, because our Constitution, a lot of that was also built upon the Bible. And so but it is, as he said, that's kind of our filter: the Lord, the Constitution, and then people.
Last question, because I know that even though we joked earlier about you being one half of the Senate and she's the other half, many times when you have a spouse that's in a leadership role, most of the time when you look at it from a holistic aspect, sometimes they're mischaracterized and misunderstood. So knowing the conversations that you guys have at home and how you're relying on God to lead you as a wife, how does that affect you when you see news articles or a post speaking negative about your husband, knowing that the backdrop of the decisions that he had to make and the counsel that he took in order to come to those decisions? How does that affect you as a wife?
A lot of it is Lord has really worked on me in terms of not harboring anything, because what you first want to do is go into defensive mode.
Right.
And that is so not God. That's not, like you can start off that way. And I'm not saying that I've gotten it perfect, but I have watched the Lord lead me in that way. And so not being defensive, but then also looking at what is entailed, what's behind, because sometimes there's something that's behind what somebody else is doing, and realizing that it could be a lot of things, but God has opened up my eyes to see hurt that's behind things, power that's behind it, money that's behind it, egos, all kinds of things. But really being able to be like, Lord, I can't let that hinder the relationship again. It really comes down relationship between me and you, and between then us and the people.
Right.
Because if you let those things come in, then you're no good to people, and then you start saying, I'll only do for you, I won't do for you, I don't like you, I like you.
Exactly.
And that is a struggle.
Yeah.
But Jesus did that. He did that.
Absolutely.
And he had so many people who said so many things about him and misunderstood him. And he was looking at the greater thing. He wasn't looking at here and now. And so I realized that this is not just a here and now. There is a greater thing. So I got to get on board with that.
Right. The greater thing.
Yes.
All right. Any last things?
Man, I just want to thank you for taking this time. Thank you for your investment in the community. Thank both of you. These types of conversations are not just changing the atmosphere in this car, which has been fantastic, but I really do believe it invests in the community. It already begins to lay the groundwork for God to continue to do big things in our community, and in particular for our young people. Our young people need to know, in particular young people of color, that
while the world may pigeonhole them and say this is your box to stay in, God is the God of big things, bigger than we can consider, and it takes people like you doing this. So thank you.
Yes, sir, and it definitely takes you out your comfort zone.
Amen. He does.
All right, that's a wrap for another session of Church Car Karaoke. This has been a wonderful opportunity, and shout out again to our pastor, William Ingles. This is his brainchild, and we're just grateful to kind of bring to reality the vision that he actually had for this. So thank you again, Senator Mike. Thank you, Ms. Charisse. Thank you to my wife, Tara, that joined us today for this segment, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Take care.
See ya.
That's a wrap for another session of Church Car Karaoke. Maybe we can get them on next time to sing a duet.
Ooh, oh my.
Last time I sang a duet, I was struggling.
Yeah.
All right, it was not pretty.
I don't do a great Peebo Bryson. I can try. You don't want to hear that, I can tell you.
No Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah. Ooh.